All right, sorry about that, guys. We're going to get everybody back in here. If you are able to come over into the new chat. All right, sorry about that.
Am I in the right place?
Yep, you're in the right place. We'll see if Steve and Sam get back on. All right.
We're back.
Sorry about that. I had my iPad on, and thank you, Copay, for that. I had my iPad on, and I just swiped off of it because I was going to try to figure out pictures tonight off of that, and it immediately just logged it off. Sorry. So let's wait and see if we can get a bunch more back in the chat quick, okay?
Okay.
So it's going to be a new YouTube link?
Yeah. I don't know how we're going to. We got 4. They're slowly coming back and finding us. We'll just take a minute.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember what number it was either, so I just quickly logged in. Okay, if Montana can figure it out,
There's Bill.
we're good.
Bill H, Tim, Copay.
Hello, Tim and Bill H. Thank you.
John Wayne, Eric. They're making it. D-Bart.
Aldo. Thank you, guys. Sorry about that. I screwed up. I switched off of my iPad. D-Bart, you did it. Yep, I'm gonna throw you under the bus and say you did it. You picked up your iPad. Do I get a refund? No.
So, Sam, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Does your husband have any interest in flying at all?
I just put the dog down. Now he's going to bark. Hold on one second. I don't know what's worse, like the husband, the dog, or the children. Okay, hopefully that's not too bad. Okay, what about the hubs?
Does he have any interest in flying at all?
So
any bit?
Man. No, none at all. He thinks
It's like a tandem, trying a tandem.
He'll never do it. He'll never do it. I would like to say I caught my first thermal on my last flight, but the truth is a much better pilot than me was below me and started to turn, and I looked down and I thought, oh shit, I'm in a thermal. I should probably start turning. And so I ended up, someone told me that I was probably about 350 meters over launch by the time I had stopped turning. And someone on launch caught a video of it, and I showed it to him, and he didn't say anything. He didn't say anything. He just was like, okay. And in truth, I think if you asked him and he was honest about it, he would probably say that he's not entirely thrilled with the idea, but he understands that for me, it's important. And I mean, and it's a sacrifice, right? Like we have young kids, we both work. There's times when I kind of I'll say to him, like, I don't know if I should go. And I think that my last flight, I turned to him and he was pretty much like, no, you should go. You want to go, you should just go. So he's definitely supportive, and he gives me the flexibility to do it. And because it's also an expense for the family. Someone once said to me, paragliding is nothing short of a selfish sport. And you figure any days that I take to fly, any time that I need to, pay a nanny to pick up my kids because I have to get on an early drive to camp overnight to try to, catch a sledder the next morning, that's expense. It's
so how far away is your where you launched from?
Here's the question, and then everyone's gonna be like, why doesn't she motor? So when I first started, the closest site was up in the Poconos. It was Blue Mountain. And as I was actually getting my P2 close to the end, it shut down as a flying site. And Blue Mountain at the time was only about like 90 minutes one way from me. When that shut down, that made Ellenville Flight Park in New York, which is well known for hang gliding and its hang gliding history. Ellenville became my closest site, which is about 3 hours one way. And that's sort of like, I have to get around Manhattan to give you an idea of the time of day and traffic to get there sometimes. And the other closest site is Brace, which is in Millerton, New York, which is on the New York side, right where Massachusetts and Connecticut meet. So it's kind of like right on the border, further north. And that's a 3.5 hour drive for me one way without any
Okay,
traffic.
are you ready for paramotoring?
So
You started this off like paragliding is way cooler, but 3 hours just to fly. I mean, yeah, you got to get a motor. Let's talk to your husband. Put him on. I'll talk to him. Be like, you got to give her $8 grand right now.
You know what? But there's a couple things like, well, you know, like I said, like I try to stay married, right? Like that's, you know, try to keep employed, the kids alive, and the husband relatively happy and still married, right? And that's a big expense to switch. I mean, that's a whole new kit.
It would save you so much time and money in nanny fees.
So,
yeah, it'll pay off down the road. It's an investment.
But thankfully, like the job that I have right now, I work 3 12-hour shifts. So that's at least doable where there's days where like the kids are in school and I can like sort of make it work. So it's been kind of possible. And my kids are young enough now, you know, in a way you kind of think it's crazy, like, holy shit, like she started, I don't know if we're allowed to curse, but you know, oh my gosh, she started when her kids were 3, but in a sense, it's almost in some ways easier because my kids they're not like in after school sports every day. They're not doing all these like crazy things or all these other things that are sort of like that eat up into our family time. So in a way, it's almost a little bit easier that they're younger. But yeah, I mean, it's the only thing is like the people that I know that do motor, I feel like they kind of stop the paragliding. They don't paraglide as much because of the convenience, I think. And for me, it's still, I don't know. It's still like, I think some of my favorite ways to be on launch are after hiking up to Brace. It sounds crazy. But after doing the hike.
See, I like motoring because I'm a heavy smoker, so I don't have to hike. I just park and I'm like, I'm going to run right here.
Yeah.
What's been your longest flight up in?
So probably, I mean, I told you I've been back and forth to Utah twice. I've probably just some ridge soaring on the south side, about like 47 minutes, you know, just kind of ridge soaring and in really awesome conditions. I just am sort of now at a point where like Jade had asked me, like, do I have any pictures of me flying? Like, honestly, I use my GoPro more with the kids when I'm chasing them around than I do. Like, I've tried a couple of times, you know, like clipping it to the harness, but then it's always like in these wonky angles where you just see like the chest strap or it's, you know what I mean? Or it's like, you're not really seeing anything. And, so as far as like my total airtime, I'll give you an idea. I have over 50 flights that I blogged. So not even all of the sort of like, not even all of the bunny hops, but I have a last count of 52 flights and my average flight time is 8 minutes. 8 minutes.
Okay, it's time for a motor.
To give you an idea. So someone's asking what wing do I buy. So
if your LZ is 3 hours away and you're catching a 8-minute sled ride,
I know. It's crazy.
We're gonna start a GoFundMe for you.
Oh,
I mean, I'm all about paragliding, but I'm just thinking for your benefit.
So like a lot of people here they'll take trips, and actually so I told you I go to Utah because that's sort of the closest place, like as far as like flight wise, to be able to get some time, and I'm hoping to be able to get some trips this year where I can go and get some more airtime. A lot of people here will go out to like Colombia in the I think it's like February they'll go to Colombia, or in like December a lot of people will go out to Valle before it gets too spicy. So there's definitely opportunities. It's just, again, like there's also family vacations, right? Like my husband's a physician, he's got call time, so it's, you know, are these trips that other people are taking scheduled at a time when I can even take them. Like our call schedules, our weekend schedules get set out like months in advance. And a lot of times the trips we aren't kind of like notified. I mean, I have my pulse on it a little bit closer, so I kind of know what's going on a little more now. But like even last year, part of that's also because like last year, my husband was having some health troubles with his foot. He had to have a bunch of surgeries, and some of the trips that I had planned, I had to cancel. So I lost out on opportunities to really be able to go and fly a lot. So I don't know if that's why he's sort of forgiving now when I say I want to do crazy things. Like he said to me the other day, I knew you were camping, but I didn't think you were going to camp in your car. I don't.
Budget is an issue with him or whatnot. If you're not a heavy drinker, you only really need one kidney. I mean.
Oh yeah, right. Right. Yeah. So I mean, it's. If you had asked me when I started, right? If you had asked me when I started, however long ago, when I say when I started, I mean like when I actually called and I showed up at the airstrip and I wrote the check for equipment. If you had told me then that I would be driving 3.5 hours one way to camp overnight to catch a sledder in the morning and hope that maybe I'd catch a second flight after another, however many 30-minute drive, 30-minute hike again, I probably would have looked at you like you were batshit crazy. Like there was no way I was going to do that because it wasn't even really in the plans. I mean, at the time I kind of thought like, oh, I'll do this. And, it's not that bad. It's like only an hour and a half away. And it kind of shows sort of my own ignorance about what it's like to try to fly in the Northeast, to be honest. Maybe ignorance is tougher. It's definitely tougher. I mean,
like even finding paramotor instructors up in the Northeast seems a lot more scarce than other places in the country.
And a lot of like a lot of the club pilots that I know that are that have more hours, that are some of the better pilots that I know, got their formal training out on the West Coast. A lot of them went to Santa Barbara. A lot of them went to Utah, and I think it just speaks to repetition, right? A lot of it's muscle memory, and that was part of the reason why I went out to Utah the first time, was because nothing to any discredit to any instructors that maybe are even qualified to instruct in the area. It's just extremely difficult when the number of flying days, like I think we're Yoshua region number 5. And if you look at the distribution, it's like the Northeast and the rest of the world is considered that region. And it's just because I think that it's so much more challenging to fly. And the ones that can fly are the pilots that are like really true P3 pilots that know how to handle active air, that know some like how to maneuver sort of these tricky launch sites. And that's hard to build. That pilot, I think, is just extremely hard to build from the ground up, starting in the Northeast, without sort of investment in time to sort of like go somewhere else just to get consistency.
What P ratings do you have, and also what wing do you fly?
So I'm a P2. I like to call myself a fledgling, right? And that's sort of the term that I use first, because what's a fledgling? But like a bird that's just sort of fluffed its feathers, and that jumps out of the nest and is only good at sinking, right? So I'm pretty much still a fledgling. The wing that I fly is a UP Dina, which is, I guess, like they market it as sort of a high A, low B. When I first started, my kids were only 3. And I told the instructor, like, I want something that I can grow with. Like, I want a wing that I can really grow with, like 5 years, that I can just like beat the life out of, SIV with, that, I'm not going to want to, that's going to last me like at least 5 years. And also something that is seen well in the trees. So mine is red. So it's like a red, white, and teal. And it's been a fun wing to fly. I also own, I know some of the people on this podcast are like, oh, I own 30 wings. Like, I got a husband and I got budget for one.
Yeah, I may be loaded, but I ain't rich.
So, and I have a ground handling wing that I used more when I was more like last year, because I joke around with other fledglings, like like my wing is designed to inflate if you sneeze on it, right? Like it's just designed to fly. Which is good in some ways, but then can be limiting.
I could sneeze on it too.
Yeah. Like it's limiting when you're trying sometimes to kite, because you're kind of limited in, especially as a newbie. what kind of wind you can even kite in without it getting a little bit dangerous and too strong for you, especially if you don't know like good kill technique and things like that. And so I ended up getting sort of a ground handling wing because I felt like if I couldn't fly, right, at least I could ground handle. I mean, I probably have well over 100 hours of ground handling. I have so much ground handling time because that's something that I can do, much more easily than flying. I will say that when I do fly, I've gotten better at reading the weather, at least I hope. I think I have. I hope I have. And that makes it kind of a little bit easier for when I pick and choose days to go out. So just the two wings of Dina that I fly, and then after I had some mishaps kiting it and like smacking it down on the leading edge, not knowing what I was doing, I got a ground handling wing that really kind of helps me when I'm trying different things or learn new maneuvers. I can use that. It's a lot smaller. It's sort of designed to be depowered. It actually has trimmers on it, so it can be used in a little bit of a wider range of wind speed. So I'll like practice things on that first now before I will pull out my full size wing, just to keep it from just getting beat up, really.
What's the strongest conditions you've flown in?
Ooh, probably just ridge storing on the south side. Maybe I'd have to ask to be sure, but I would say maybe like 12 to 13 miles an hour, maybe closer to 12 miles an hour. I mean, nothing crazy. Nothing crazy.
So what do you have in your bucket list for things that you want to do?
Oh man. So after my
underwater basket weaving.
Yeah, right. Like there's definitely places and things like there's an idea of what kind of pilot I'd like to become. You hear the term pilot in command, right? What does it take to be a pilot in command? Like what is that person? Like I've seen pilots that are on your show, and I've heard other pilots talk, and ones that are actual pilots, like actual aviation pilots, that just they understand the weather. They understand, like, there's just their breadth of knowledge is just amazing. People that like know how to read and plan an XC triangle. Like there was a bunch of pilots that were going to try a triangle at a brace today, just to get to that point where you have that knowledge to be able to do those things is pretty awesome. As far as like immediate bucket list, I actually signed up for SIV. Oh, my husband doesn't know this yet. But I signed up for I should probably tell him before he listens to this, if he listens. So I signed up for SIV out with Dylan Benedetti in Santa Barbara next June, which is something that I kind of like toyed back and forth about, like when would be a good time to do it. And then my last flight at Brace, I'm kind of following, or this pilot's under me, and we're kind of going up, and as I'm going up, I'm noticing, oh, I'm getting close to the ridge. I better pop out of this, pop out, get on bar a little bit. And as I'm doing that, I hear I hear one of the mentors on radio. So guys, you really want to stay out in front of the ridge, So
a quick question, Sam, because you just said something. Do you fly with speed bar often? Is that kind of standard, or
no?
To get on bar?
No, I don't. But like at that moment when I saw myself, I realized like, and I actually don't fly with I have not yet flown with a true like variometer. I have one. I actually have a Skytrax with 2.1 like Flarm Fanet. But I haven't actually flown with it yet. And I brought it to launch. And part of the reason is because, the instructor that I worked with in Utah kind of said to me something that stuck. And it was sort of that when you first learn, you really should be able to feel the air and know what you're doing before you sort of complicate things with instruments. Because if you start too soon with instruments, you're never going to know what it feels like. And you're going to get trapped in sort of like looking at the screen too much, which you really should be looking at the sky, at the ground, at everything around you. So my first year, I didn't necessarily mind that my flights were all short because I sucked at landing setups. I mean, like awful. Like awful. I would totally crowd my landing approaches. I would overshoot things. I would have no idea how to spot my landing. So my first year, I didn't care about taking a bunch of sledders because for me, it was like, I need to learn how to land. Like I need to learn how to launch. I need to learn how to land. So it was a lot of
mine was
kiting.
pretty bad, but I have bad aim. Just look at my bathroom.
So it was like a lot of launch, kiting practice, and then landings. And now I'm at a point where I feel like my landing setups are good. Like my spot landings are pretty decent. I've had a couple situations where I've kind of been bumped up a little bit or the wind's shifted and I've made corrections. So I feel better about the landings. And now I'm at a point where I can focus on really feeling the air, knowing when I'm in lift, trying to turn in lift. It's when you're up there and it's just like sensory overload. Like there's just so much stuff, right? There's so much stuff coming at you. And maybe my brain is very much like a chatter brain where I'd be up there and it's like 50 million things like running through my head. And it's just, I have very limited mental bandwidth. I can only focus on like one thing at a time. I guess maybe like one season at a time even. So I have the Vario. I'm probably now just going to start flying with it. I actually have an audio only that I have on my wrist that I oftentimes don't turn on because mostly what I hear is, that sound of like, you're just gliding down. And I don't like to be reminded of that. But yeah,
I wonder if they could program a Vario to like speak R2D2.
Oh yeah, or like encouraging, the encouraging Vario. That would be great. You're doing great. Just turn a little.
You're going up, woman.
Turn a little tighter.
Another question about, you mentioned weather. What kind of apps do you use to check the weather?
So I default, because I'm a simple mind and I like colors and drawings, I look mostly at windy. Also because I find, so I had, because for me, honestly, it's the easiest to read. And I'm not at a point where I'm really doing like XC flying. So, oh yeah, the Vario sound. I'm not at a point in my flying where I can really like, I mean, I can appreciate other people's XC. I can't say that I can appreciate it with a full understanding of how they plan their routes. Flying, it's like unpeeling an onion. There's layers, right? I'm still at, the top of the stack as far as things that I'm going through. But I, very early on, I think it's part of how I work. And I think how for a lot of pilots, I'm a very sort of like detailed, like I like to have a better understanding of why things are happening, explain to me the physics, explain to me the aerodynamics. Why did I have this landing on this day, but not on this day? What was different? And so I ended up joining the Fly with Greg community online because a lot of the videos that I did watch, I found were released by Fly Bubble, and they were Greg Hamilton's videos. And a lot of what he has done sort of with his group as far as weather analysis and his discussions and his explanations on reading the weather have been based on windy. They also do a lot of like, they use other apps for like the XC guys that I don't, I'll kind of peek into. But I definitely like 100% default to windy. It's the easiest for me to read right now. So do you guys have anything that you guys sort of default to when you look for the weather? Or is there anything like, how detailed do you guys have to be as far as looking for the motoring?
Well, we have to seek out super calm conditions, but windy is definitely a favorite of ours. But I'll check 4 different apps.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Brian Carlton.
Bumble.
Bumble.
Yeah.
I don't use that one.
Google it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so windy's kind of the go-to. I'll kind of obsessively check it.
Yep, that's for me too, that and Ryan Carlton.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to tell them a little bit, go back to when you met your mom. I found that kind of interesting.
Oh, so yeah, so we were the agency that my sister and I were adopted through. Holt is a pretty big agency out of South Korea. And I had always kind of had an interest in going back to the country to sort of visit it. You know, growing up in the States, you don't really get a whole lot of like East Asian history. And it was just something where I always kind of felt like I wanted to go back and visit the country. But as a non-Korean speaker, that can be a little bit intimidating, you know, when you certainly look Korean, but you don't in any way act culturally Korean or speak the language. So the agency at the time was sponsoring trips for like adult adoptees that they could go overseas and go on like more of these cultural trips. So I signed up to do a cultural trip with a bunch of adoptees because I figured, like, oh, this is like a safe space, right? These are all people that kind of fit into my category of being somewhat South Korean imposters. And it was all adults, which was nice. And part of like what they asked you was if you wanted to do like a birth search or try to visit like the group home that you lived in, or, you know, if you wanted to reconnect in any way with like your adoption history in South Korea. And at first I circled no, because in truth, you know, I never really had this overwhelming desire. You know, my parents, when we had gotten older, had kind of explained the story that our father had passed away when our parents were very young, and our mom had a lot of difficulty trying to raise two girls in South Korea as a young single mom. And so she had relinquished us to be adopted specifically by a Christian couple in the United States, and that's how we ended up adopted. And so I was always kind of like cool with that story. You know, I never really felt like anything was missing. But like maybe like a couple weeks before we left, the social worker sent me back my paperwork and said, "Oh, hey, you know, you forgot to fill out this stuff." And at that point, you know, I saw those questions again, and I thought, oh shit, you know, I'm going to travel like this 12, 14-hour plane ride. I might as well say circle yes, right, to numbers 1, 2, 3. And it was kind of a cop out, to be honest. Like, at least I could never say I never tried, haha. You know, and at that point, a couple of the girls going on the trip had kind of been in contact with each other. And there were two other women that had actually been able to connect with their biological family. And I think for one person, it involved a private investigator. For the other person, it was like a several-year process of searching. So I never kind of anticipated anything was going to happen of it. And then right before we left, I got this phone call from the social worker kind of saying, well, you know, I hope you're sitting. And, you know, she had out the feelers like, oh, you know, what were you expecting or what were you thinking when you know, circled yes? And I was pretty straightforward. I said, like, honestly, I didn't think anything was coming of it. We're leaving in a couple of weeks, right? And then she said, well, how would you feel if we actually have a record of who your mom is? She had actually sought post-adoptive counseling through the agency. And every time she moved, she had updated her address. And so we know where she is now. And it was just it's the agency's policy, you know, to protect the adoptees and the mothers, that they don't release any of the information unless as an adult you sort of independently seek that information out for yourself, but that the information was actually always there. I just had to ask, like one of us had to ask. And so there was sort of like, you know, flashbulb memory, right? Like I'm in REI holding a bottle of like travel soap thinking like, holy shit, I have to call my sister, because my sister wasn't even planning on going on this trip. And I had to call her and let her know. And I had to let my parents know. Like my parents didn't even know I had filled out this information. And then, you know, kind of had this breakdown in the car, like this overwhelming sense of guilt. Like, oh my God, this woman on the other side of the world has thought about me her whole life. And it was like a total, like afterthought, like it was a cop out. I didn't think anything was going to come of it, you know? So we ended up meeting her. I met her first. And then I think the next day my sister flew into South Korea and met her, and sort of all of our extended family, like we have half sisters over there. She ended up remarrying, so she has a second husband and cousins and things. And it's interesting now because like we sort of very peripherally know each other. Some of it's because of the language barrier. But I saw like, you know, a cousin of mine in South Korea had a video of her on a tandem paragliding ride in like South Korea. And it's like, oh, I guess I do come from that family, you know, and maybe there's something in that just never had an outlet.
And didn't you say that your mom was big into hiking and other
Yeah.
things?
So when we met, they had married young, and she had kind of described that was sort of the things that they used to like to do. They used to like to go hiking and camping, and because you have like sort of like the getting to know you, like what's your life like, what do you like to do, and so that sort of came out. She also is the type of woman that uh, decided. I think they told me she was trying to learn how to rollerblade when she was 50. Like sort of every now and then, like there's stories like, oh, I guess so trying to learn to paraglide at 38 is sort of kind of in line.
And she drove 3 hours to go to that.
Yeah,
Rink.
maybe, yes,
3
exactly.
hours.
She drove
And-
3 hours and slept
and camped
overnight
there. Just rollerblade.
to do it. Yeah, it's kind of wild. It's kind of
Yeah,
crazy.
cool. I'm gonna
I would
share.
love to go to South Korea to fly, though. I would love to go.
So who is this?
Is that me? I hope that's a good launch. Oh yeah, that was one of the last ones. Yeah, that's at
Where's
Race.
this-
Yeah,
Where's
so
this
that's
at?
that's Race Mountain. That's Millerton. Oh, there's Victor. Victor was the one on radio. Guys, you want to stay in front of the ridge. he's a P4. So so the sites. Oh yeah, that was one of my first. I think that was actually my first launch at Race. Actually, you can see it's fledgling conditions, right? No wind, easy sledder.
See what else we got.
So that was my first time out in Utah. I was with hanging with Dale Covington, who's an amazing instructor. And yeah, he just kind of radioed me in on a top landing, like, hey, why don't you try to top land this? And then just kind of like talked me through it. The second time I went back, I ended up sort of I don't know if it's still considered a top landing if you do it on the main launch on the north side, because the north side has like sort of a step. But had done that myself, so yeah, a lot of kiting, I guess, to get there. So
Kiting's fun.
yeah, it's
Kiting's
honestly, I love
therapeutic.
I was gonna say it's kind of meditative, right? Like, do you guys fly with music? Do you guys have something in your ears, or is it just quiet? Is it just like the sound of the motor when you guys are
A
out?
lot of my friends do. I haven't yet because I'm just like, I used to be a musician, and music gives me a lot of joy, but so does paramotoring. So I'm like, paramotoring's enough. I don't want to add more stuff on it because next thing you know, I'll be doing coke up in there or something. Who knows?
Oh no!
No, I don't fly with music.
Okay. Yeah, I don't either. I'll kite with music sometimes. Do you, Jade?
Yeah, at times I do. When I can get my earbuds to work, or
I'll go out to the field, light some candles, bring some wine, put on some Kenny G. Be like, oh yeah.
Wear a dress.
Wear something low cut and sexy,
I forgot to warn you about him. Right. Eric says we fly with the static in our radios.
Oh, that's
usually us.
Yeah.
When Jade goes tandem with Eric, she'll be her his was it Vario, like she'll just be back there going beep, 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 beep.
So I think to him, yeah, that's right. Kind of like that picture that I had singing to you. So, let's see. Well, with the screw up we had 1 hour. This is an hour.
Oh wow.
So
wow, is it really? Oh my God, it is an hour.
Anybody got any other questions for her? And if anybody knows anybody in the East Coast area that does paragliding, because she doesn't want to get in trouble with her husband on buying a motor.
If anybody has a motor for sale for dirt cheap,
please let us know in the chat here if there's any areas that you can think of. Where about in New Jersey again?
So I'm outside of Philly. I'm like in South Jersey, outside the Philadelphia area.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm like 20 minutes out.
So they do have wings designed for free flight as well as paramotoring.
I know. Are they?
Universal. And wings, low hour wings do have really good resale value. Just saying.
I know, isn't that terrible? It's it's not going to be a matter of the low hours. It's going to be a matter of how much time has passed and how much
you've done a lot of
has
kiting
changed.
hours on yours, though. I forgot about that.
So, yeah, I mean, it's like I kind of told Jade the story of like the story of running the marathon. It's I like our progression's never as fast as we want it to, but I've always kind of had this idea that it's I'm sort of in it for the long run, and I kind of learn and I do what I can while I can. So it's a lot of kiting and as for now, and like a lot of trying to understand the weather and learning conditions and getting forecasts back from other pilots that have maybe gone out to fly and see like, oh, did what I think it was the day was going to be like, was that really how it unfolded? Like how wrong was I, or how close was I to the conditions? And then just kind of getting it when I can, taking trips when I can to build the time. And kind of slowly going from there. Or getting a motor and just getting lots of airtime, banging out the airtime, like a lot of other pilots I know.
Well, what's nice is it's never a rush. It doesn't matter where you're at or how good you are. It's just, are you doing it? Because you'll eventually grow into something more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if you like to glide, you can glide.
That's right. So if nobody else has got any questions, we didn't get a chance to even ask you if you're able to come on an after show or not. I did put a link in the chat if anybody wants to join, and if Sam is willing to stick around. Otherwise, maybe Deweese and Steve want to stick around too.
Yep.
All night long.
Oh, right. Maybe I can get Eric on here in the after show also. So anyway, I thank you, Samantha, for joining us tonight. And sorry I hit the wrong button on my iPad. Thank you, everyone. I just want to say thank you to Mr. D. Bart West, who's out in Nevada. Mr. Tim Montana, who says he's never heard me call him Tim. John Wayne, thanks for joining. Copay. And I know Tony and Angela were in here. John Wayne. Let's see, who else?
Aaron and I.
Aaron and I. Bill H. was in here. I think he had to leave, I think.
Copay J, what's your real name?
I know.
Do you know? Oh, I'm going to ask you later.
I know. And Walter was in here.
Walter, yeah.
Yep, that's cool. He hasn't been on for a while. He says he's been hibernating. Mark McElroy was in here. Thank you, sir.
Is it cold in Australia right now?
Yeah, I know, Jason.
Are they opposite of us or something?
Yep. So, all right. Next week, I wasn't able to get into the chat, but we should be back home. Hopefully things will be mellowed out a little bit and I won't hit the end too fast. And
you got Samantha, the social media question, Jade?
Yep. Samantha, you're more than welcome to come on our shows in the future. And
thanks.
Do you have any social media pages that you are at that we can watch you?
I'm not really, to be honest. I'm a Facebook lurker. I confess, I'm a Facebook lurker. I have an Instagram. It's Schnooty Poo. That's my dog's nickname.
What is it?
It's Schnooty Poo. SCHNOOTIEPOO.
That's what they called me in high school.
Schnooty Poo. Yeah, that's my dog's name. I think there might be a picture of my dog actually on the account.
And that's on Instagram. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah. So, and Deweese, do you have any new videos out, and where can we find them?
No, I have. They're on YouTube under Deweese Milstead. Nothing new on there since the fly-in. I've got Facebook, Deweese Milstead, and I can't remember. That's it. I don't know too much.
And Hot Buttered Steve, what about you? You've been posting a lot.
I don't want to be found. Just remember, if we don't see you on the air, we'll see you in the air. Yeah.
You said it too early. So anyway, I'll say my social media. I'm at Facebook under my name, and also under the Girls Just Want to Fly page, and also on Instagram occasionally on Flying Flamingo 12, and paramotorgirl.com on YouTube. I gotta start cracking the whip and making some videos from our fly-in and see if I can do something for Oshkosh.
Oshkosh, Wisconsin, you're damn.
Yeah, I hate I missed.
And if you guys ever have a chance to go, please go. It's the last week of July. It is awesome. So it's not because Steve or I are there. It'll be because Deweese will be there next year.
Right, I'll be there.
So.
Oh, and anyway, the winner of the fanciest glasses competition is a tie between me and Sam.
Yep. Very good, yeah. Okay, on that note, we need to go. All right, guys. See you next week in the air.
Toodles.
Bye.
Nothing is untrue.